The month of July has been very interesting in the world of film, specifically because, like we said before here, we have 3 major releases coming out this month. And because of that, we have been going and experiencing these specific films in theaters. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, the second of the 3 big films coming out in July are no different, because today on this summer film fest here on Movie Savant, I am talking about a film that I was not expecting to be as good as it is, and that movie is Superman. Now, I am gonna go ahead and just be very open here. I will talk about spoilers. This movie has already been out for a couple of days, and by the time you see it, it's already gonna be a week since the movie came out. So I wanted to give my take on it, what I think about it, and I'm going to be revealing some things that happen in the film, so I just wanted to leave that on the table for you guys to know. And if you already watched this film, please stay along for the ride, because I do have a lot of thoughts on this film that I really, really, really enjoyed. I think this film is a very unique opportunity to talk about how Superman has evolved in a lot of people's eyes. So ultimately you have, of course, the very original first film that everybody talks about, the Richard Donner version of Superman, which, honestly speaking, it's very hard to even criticize that film because it exists on a different level. There's no way to criticize it other than to just watch and absorb this incredible cinematic experience that film, brings you. And then obviously you move on forward with, the next sort of film that does not have Christopher Reeve in it, which ends up being Superman Returns. Obviously you had the other ones with Christopher Reeve in it, like Superman 2 and 3. And I feel like those were great in their own right, and a lot of people enjoyed those films, but they were never the top of the echelon, like the very first Superman movie. But then you have Brandon Routh, who comes in and does Superman, and he does a really great interpretation of Superman. He kind of carries the same weight, as Christopher Reeve. I mean, I'm not saying that he is better than Christopher Reeve, but he's there kind of creating a continuation of what Christopher Reeve did, and that was kind of sort of an evolution of it, and they even added, Kevin Spacey in that story to be, Lex Luthor, and that was really good too. And I mean, that was a really good movie. And then you go into the Zack Snyder version, which then you have Man of Steel and all of that, and you have that entire sort of other DC sort of pocket universe that they created, which was, it had great projects and it had not so great projects. So to kind of refresh my memory, I went back and I rewatched Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, and to kind of get my mind tonally as to what it was like when Zack Snyder was creating it. Now, mind you, it was all cinematic and beautiful, and then those excellent moments in those films, but I wouldn't say that those are the pinnacle moments of DC. So after seeing that and kind of resetting my brain to what came before, I went into this film thinking, this better be good, because DC is in need of a win right now. Because after all the DCU that kind of came before, and it was kind of mixed and the reviews weren't all that great, this needed a win. And I feel deep down that Superman is a big win for DC. And let's start off with something that I normally don't really start off with, and that is the casting. I feel like the casting for this film is quite brilliant. David Corenswet. This guy is amazing. He is a great representation of a more modernized version of Superman. He leads with, kindness. And I found something really interesting in this film is that they kind of bridged the personalities of Clark Kent and Superman ultimately, when we watch older films, Clark Kent and Superman are kind of like completely different people, but I feel like there's a whole lot more Clark Kent in Superman in this version of Superman, and I feel like it's really interesting because you see a much more human side of him, and they did a great job by doing that, and James Gunn did great by building this sort of different version of Superman that really you kind of have like some heart with, and you can kind of like see as he like progresses, and he's kind of, you know, geeky in certain moments, and it feels like that's kind of ingrained in him. Even though we do get the Clark Kent moment in the film, it's a small moment, but we do get him as Clark Kent in the film. And then we find out that, you know, the Justice Gang know who Clark Kent is, and like because he's super nice, he kind of like reveals that. So I mean, that like really nice little dynamic that they created was really interesting, and it worked. It just worked, and I think that they did a great job explaining to people, okay, he's pretty well established in this universe, and people either love him or hate him. It's really kind of like a mixed bag, and I think that they did a great job kind of explaining that, you know, version of it. Again, this is not an origin story, but they were able to give us the basis for us to go on to understand who he is as a character, and I think James Gunn did an excellent job with David Corenswet in this case. And obviously you can't have Superman without having the essential part, his essential counterpart, which is Lois Lane. And obviously Rachel Brosnahan did a fantastic job here, really encompassing that sort of like reporter spirit. She's investigative, she doesn't hold back when it comes to, you know, trying to dig deep and understand who this character or this person is, you know, when it comes to Superman, and kind of the line that he draws with her and that sort of thing. She is great as this character, so much that at times she reminds you of Margot Kidder as, you know, Lois Lane, as she did, you know, in the original Superman. You know, Margot Kidder did a great job then, and you can kind of see where the spirit of that character is here with Rachel Brosnahan. And at times, she kind of, when you look at her at certain angles, she kind of looks like Margot Kidder. So it's really interesting that, you know, she's in this position to play Lois Lane. You know, Rachel Brosnahan did a great job here, and I can't wait to see where she goes here. She's a bit of a badass, you know, in this film at times. You know, she is obviously always very investigative, but she kind of gives off that sort of like badass, you know, feeling, like she's not backing down, and she did great. She did absolutely great in this film, and I can't wait to see her come back again and play this character again in future DC Universe films. And obviously you can't have Superman without his arch nemesis, you know, the big bad that we always associate with Superman, and that is Lex Luthor, and in this case Nicholas Hoult did great. I think he did great. I feel like, I'm pretty sure if I pick up a comic book and I look at Lex Luthor on the comic book, depending on which comic book I pick up, I'm almost certain that it's going to look like Nicholas Hoult does in this film, and it just looks great. He looks great as Lex Luthor. He gives out, you know, that performance of like someone who really wants to, you know, go after Superman, and like he doesn't care, and he's willing to play dirty and do whatever it takes to, you know, get land and like get people in this sort of like convoluted way. He plays Lex Luthor really well, and I feel like he plays off really well with David Corenswet. You know, David Corenswet and Nicholas Hoult have a really good banter going on when it comes to Lex and Superman, you know, and it does really well. It's rare that you get moments like this where those characters are really like clearly, you know, wanting to rip each other's heads off. So I think he did a really great job. Nicholas Hoult as a whole, as an actor, fantastic as well. I'm pretty sure we're going to see him again, but we'll see. We'll see how far Lex Luthor is willing to go to get what he wants, even in future films. And then obviously we have what I think. I don't know if this is in the comic books for sure. Like, I'm not extremely well versed in the comics, but I have never heard of the Justice Gang. I know of the Justice League, but the Justice Gang, had never heard of Justice Gang before. But we have to talk about them. We have incredible actors here. We have Nathan Fillion playing the Green Lantern. I think he's great as the Green Lantern. He's funny. I know that we're gonna get a Green Lantern series coming from the DC universe, so hopefully we get to see this character a little bit more often, and we see a different side of him. So ultimately, I'm very excited to see Nathan Fillion end up, in a series, and we get to explore this character a little bit more because he's pretty entertaining in this film, as is. And also a part of this team is Hawk Girl herself, Isabella Merced, who is really great in this film. Again, we see very little moments with her, but we can tell that she's not like Superman, and she very clearly says it in this film, like almost verbatim what I'm telling you. She says, I'm not like Superman. So you can clearly see that she is not gonna follow those like kind little rules, and she's gonna just completely obliterate whatever's in front of her. But I'm very excited to see more of her in the DC universe. We don't get a lot of her in this film, but I'm excited to see where her future goes as Hawkgirl. Are we going to explore Hawkgirl in a series, in something a little bit more in depth? Who knows? I'm really excited to see where she goes in the DCU. And the third, and obviously the coolest member of the Justice Gang, is Mr. Terrific, which is played by Eddie Gathegi. He is awesome in this film. As a matter of fact, he's probably the one true hero of the Justice Gang that we see the most of on screen, with the most on-screen time. He is so cool. He's just the coolest character that you can possibly have, in a story like this. He's, savvy with technology. He, knows like little secrets here and there to like get around situations. He kicks butt. There's like one scene in the film where he just kicks butt, like seriously, like there's no other way to put it. And I love that. I love that this character is in here. I've never heard of Mr. Terrific, and this is my first time kind of seeing him on screen, and I'm really interested to see where this goes with him, because I know for a fact we're going to see something evolve with him. He's going to be a character we're going to see more of, and they made it very clear in this film that he is there to kind of like go the next level with DC as a whole, and I would be very excited to see him. Something that we get to see in this film as well, I would say not something, but the people who we get to see in this film as well, as the parents of Kal-El himself, of Superman himself, is Bradley Cooper as Zor-El, and his mother, played by Angela Serafine, who are like great actors. I mean, to have Bradley Cooper and Angela Serafine in your project, and I mean, they only get like this much screen time the entire film, and that's really interesting, because if you stop to think about it, the very original film had Marlon Brando, and Marlon Brando doesn't show up a whole lot in that film, but he plays the father of, Kal-El. So it's really interesting to see Bradley Cooper be here and play this character, and it's really interesting to just see his parents, to see Superman's parents, play a role in this film, and kind of like misconstrued this sort of entire experience. I mean, it's really interesting to see the approach that they try to take to say that, these people are kind of like, dumb, and they really are inferior creatures, and do not like have them bow down to you and think that way. Like, that's a really strange approach. I still think, even after watching the movie, that none of that is true. that all of that was fabricated, that the first part of the message that he had is still true, and the second part, it was just completely misconstrued and read completely wrong. I just would like to see that maybe in a future film, and hopefully them, cover that. Like say, hey, that last part didn't quite say that. And to see those two great actors, Bradley Cooper and Angela Serafian, is amazing. Absolutely amazing to see them in this film playing the father and mother of Superman. Now, a part of Lex's, bad guy group, sinister group here, we do have the engineer, which, based on the film, they kind of tease that she's still alive, and then I think that maybe she will be in a future film, so that was kind of like a way of them making sure that she's probably in a future film. But played by Maria Gabriela de Faria, I think she was great. Even though we see, like, she has her fighting moments and she does great in this film. She doesn't have a whole lot of lines in this film, but she's really great. The physicality she puts into the character, movements, and you really do feel like she is, using all these nanobots, these nanites, to, control whatever she needs to control. And I think that is a really interesting dynamic that they could play into in future films, and maybe she can become a shapeshifter in some sort of way. But seeing her here and kind of feeling that she's probably going to be in a future project is really fun, and I can't wait to see what else Maria has in store for us in future DC Universe films. Now, obviously, I have to talk about the actors that gave a little bit more, like honorable mentions to actors that I think did really well here. Now, Skylar Gisondo, I've seen him do other comedic roles, so I am aware of his comedic chops, and I think he did great here. I think he did a really great job, kind of playing Superman's friend. He's Superman's essentially his best friend, so I should say Clark Kent. I said Superman. Sorry. Different part of his life. But seeing Clark and, Jimmy kind of like get along with each other, in that moment in the film where, you see him as Clark Kent, really cool, really fun. He added a certain level of characteristic to the character, a certain level of like care to the character. Skylar did a great job adding that sort of care to Jimmy Olsen, because he has to be there for Superman in a big way. And seeing his dynamic play out with Eve in this film, which will be my next one, by the way, but nonetheless, he plays a great role here. Seeing him have this sort of like love connection with Eve, and being that she's like the inside source, and that she's been, becoming this sort of really cool, partnership there. Really great. I think it's a great comedic connection that he has in this film, and people loved it. I mean, in the theater, people were laughing every time something happened with him, and he's just absolutely great in this film. And obviously, my second honorable mention here has to be to Eve herself, Sarah Sampaio. She did great in this film as Eve Teschmacher, because obviously Eve is kind of there to, be curious, and she's curious about Lex and this, whole world that revolves around him. And she does great in this film, as this sort of like, skittish kind of like girlfriend figure. And then later we find out that she was kind of, just being with Lex because she wanted to be with a powerful guy. And then ultimately, deep down, she just wanted love and affection. And that's why she ended up going back to Jimmy. I love that she played this character. Sarah Sampaio played Eve really well. It was fun to see her on screen, and I can't wait to see her come back in a future DC project, because I know for a fact that she's definitely going to be back for more. And I think my final honorable mention has to go to Anthony Carrigan in this movie, who plays Metamorpho.
I was never aware of who Metamorpho was. I mean, I've always heard people say, like, oh, Metamorpho. Okay. Metamorpho in this movie has so much compassion, worry about, this child that he has. And it's funny because he is covered in makeup. So, I mean, he has to emote a lot, and the makeup is so well made on him that he does emote really well. And just to see this kind of like progression of him, kind of locked up, kind of like holding Superman against his will inside a cage to ultimately helping Superman, get stronger and essentially making like an artificial sun just to get out of this cage that they're in, and then ultimately helping him. And then in the end, like him kind of joining the Justice Gang is really fun. And I think Anthony did a great job here. And he made me fall in love with a character that I never knew that I actually would like. But Metamorpho in this universe is fantastic, and I can't wait to see more of it. Now, casting is great and all, and talking about all these incredible actors is great. But then you're probably going to ask, Marcelo, come on. You like filmography. You like cinematography. What do you think about the cinematography of this film? And that's where I would say that the cinematography of this film is quite great. There's incredible imagery in this film. Moments that you could easily take a screenshot. As a matter of fact, you could take this entire movie, grab screenshots of it, and make like a comic book series out of it, because it's just that good. It takes these incredible moments of imagery and actually puts you in this, world that is new and has a lot of fresh takes on certain things. And honestly, it's really interesting to see how well done James Gunn has made this film and how much love he's poured into this film, because it's not easy to tell the story of a man his superpower is his compassion. And I think that that's what comes across here in this film, is that's the focus, is that compassion is the key, that love is the key here, that even through all this turmoil, if your focus is love and caring for others, then that is going to be your superpower. That is going to be the power to actually go and do incredible things. Honestly, I would not be surprised if this movie ended with Power of Love by Huey Lewis in the News. That would have been hilarious, kind of like a Back to the Future moment, but that would have been really funny, because that's essentially the message the movie is passing with all this incredible imagery, the cinematography, the story as well. That is the focus of this story, is that compassion, even through all this evil. For one man to actually be that, caring and compassionate is so important, specifically nowadays, for this kind of really weird world we're living in. Now, I do have to say James Gunn was a little bit coy when people asked him, hey, we hear you using the John Williams theme. It's not like you're going to be using the John Williams theme in this movie, are you? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to incorporate it into the theme of the song somehow. It's going to be incorporated there in some places. He played pretty coy, but I'm going to say this. The number of times that you hear the Superman theme in this movie is a lot. You hear it a lot. I will tell you this, because you will have those undertones and those background, jingles that will keep you like thinking of that theme. And honestly speaking, you can't change that. Unfortunately, John Williams created an incredible theme for Superman that, unfortunately, you can't change. Even if you try to create something new, it has to be something way off and not something that feels derivative. I mean, say what you want about Zack Snyder's version of Superman, that theme was very different to this. Because here, you hear this in, the John Williams theme in different tones, different tonalities, different instruments. It's really interesting to see that play out in this film. And to me, it just shows me that James Gunn knows what he's doing. He knows what he's building, and ultimately he's just trying to make an incredible, universe that people will just want to come back and revisit. And he's doing that fantastically well by including this iconic theme in this film. Now in this movie, obviously toward the end of this film, they kind of tease a little bit, how Supergirl is going to be. Yes, Millie Alcock does appear in this film as Supergirl. And she's kind of like a little bit aloof and kind of drunk and kind of weird. I mean, I wouldn't associate that with that character, but I feel like it has to do a lot with the premise that they're building for the Supergirl film, which, based on what I heard, comes out next year. So that would be very interesting to see her and how she kind of navigates this world. I mean, James Gunn himself has said that they both had very different upbringings, because if you stop to think about it, Supergirl's origin is kind of different than Kal-El's origin, because ultimately they're kind of split up at birth, and one ends up on one end and the other one ends up on the other end, and ultimately that's how things kind of, run their course. But I'm really interested to see how James Gunn incorporates her in some way into this, new universe, because ultimately he has stated that the 4 tentpole characters of this new universe is obviously Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Supergirl. Supergirl is going to be one of those tentpole characters, based on, obviously, having all these different superheroes as a part of this thing, where ultimately you would say it's just 3. In this case, it's going to be the 4th, and Supergirl being that 4th superhero is very interesting to me, and I really want to dive into her, backstory and understand where this is going to go, because seeing her the way she is there doesn't really instigate any sort of confidence in me that she could be a hero. So I want to see that shift in character ultimately being played out in this Supergirl film that we should be getting next year. Now, if there is one person that I think, whenever I think of Superman, and I associate that hero with somebody, at least with a memory or with someone who always talks about this one hero, and that's my dad when he talks about Superman. For him, Superman is something that he is puts up on a very high echelon, and deservingly so. Unfortunately, whenever you see the original Superman with Richard Donner, the version with Richard Donner, I think it really sets an echelon that's really high, and you can't really reach that. So for me, when I went into seeing this film, I wanted to make sure that my dad was going to enjoy this film. And he even said it himself. He thought I'm going to go into this film and I'm going to love this film, because ultimately it isn't the old DCU, which was dark and gritty, and it didn't feel like the DC universe that he grew up with. Grew up seeing, at least when it comes to, that original Superman. So for him, he thought he was going to like this movie. And unfortunately for him, he just thought this movie was not it. It just didn't work for him. A lot of aspects of the story didn't work for him. And that's okay. Honestly, I see so many people online saying, no, you have to like Superman. And honestly, I don't think that you're obligated to like this movie. The movie just has a message. Whether you want to accept it or not is up to you. Now, honestly, I don't see that the message of the movie being the issue. It's just aspects of the movie that may be off-putting to some people who are there just to go for a certain thing. They just want a certain feeling from this film. And you're either going to receive it in full or you're going to receive it in almost nothing. So go into this movie with an open mind and open heart as well, and understand that this is not an origin story. We're not talking about the origin of Superman, because James Gunn himself said it. Listen, we shouldn't be making the same movie over and over again. Because if you want to see an origin story, you can watch the original Superman, which is a fantastic film that explains to you who, Clark Kent is, where he grew up, this entire story. It's beautifully told. If you want to learn the origin, that's where you're going to go. You're going to go to that film. So James Gunn himself said it. Listen, I'm not here to tell an origin story. You're going to get right into the action as soon as the movie begins. And that's kind of how it happens. We're introduced to Superman as he's all broken and kind of in a really bad state. So to see that happen in this film kind of intrigues you to want to see more and understand the characteristics as to why he's that way. And, for some people, it's going to work, and for others, it's not. So honestly, for me, it didn't change how I felt about the movie. It didn't change how he felt about the movie, how I felt. And that's how it is. I mean, a lot of people are going to absolutely love this movie, and some people are just not going to feel a connection to the characters, and that's totally fine. And I think that should be more easily promoted when we talk about films like these. For some people are not going to like it, and other people are going to absolutely love it. So it is what it is. And I think that, he brought up a lot of great points when we were having the conversation after the film. There were aspects of the movie that he did like the Eve Teschmacher and Jimmy Olsen dynamic. That was really cool, and he really enjoyed that. So listen, I'm gonna play it like Superman in this case, and I still think that ultimately, when the other films come around and we see him in the other films, we might see, maybe my dad will come around to liking David Corenswet at some point. Even though he did like David Corenswet as Superman, he just didn't like the story. But ultimately, I feel like we're gonna progress here. But nonetheless, opinions are different and opinions are valid. So it happens. And to finally quote what I hear on the internet by so many people, it's funny, but I want to repeat it anyway because it is funny, and it kind of best describes the situation. The Gunn, aka James Gunn, the Gunn did not jam in this case, and I think that there's a lot of little aspects of this movie, in its action sequences, in how it's shot, in how it feels like a comic book movie, in how its characters are very interesting and complex and have their own emotions about certain situations and how they interact with each other. All these little aspects just makes this film really fun and entertaining and comedic at times and loving and honestly, that's the goal of this film, is to focus your energy on as much compassion as possible, and the more compassionate you are, hopefully the better human being you can become. And I feel like that's the message that this movie wants to get across, and I think it does it really well while also adding action and adding moments that you would easily see in a comic book that is Superman. And all in all, I think this movie did a great job. I mean, at least for me, it did a great job. It was entertaining. It was fun. It had, the great moments that I wanted to look forward to. And honestly, it surprised me. It wasn't on my list of most anticipated films. Obviously, the movie that we are going to be seeing next week is my personal most anticipated film. I would say that this film is very, very much up there now with so far one of the best movies of 2025 so far. I still have yet to see Fantastic Four, and that would probably either solidify this one as the best superhero movie so far this year or not. So we'll see. We'll have to see. Now, you're probably asking, where would you put this on your Movie Savant Summer Film Fest thermometer? And I would have to say Superman would probably easily be right here, like right here, where I would probably say is like, it's a really dang good movie. Like, that's how I would put it. It's a really dang good movie. You're gonna enjoy it. You're gonna sit down. You're gonna have fun. Don't come into this film thinking it's an origin story. It's not. It's designed for you to just sit back, enjoy, and understand that if you already know Superman's origin, it's just gonna make this whole entire movie make a whole lot of sense, and you're just thrusted into the action. So I think that it's a really great film that you can go and watch and have fun, bring your family to, laugh, probably get emotional at times, and really have this incredible experience, you know, with family and friends, and have this really great time. And that's what this movie provides. It's a really great time. And ultimately, like I say in all my videos, I have these opinions, but what about yours? I want to hear from you. What do you think? Do you think that Superman is a great movie? Do you think it's a bad movie? If you think it's a bad movie, put down in the comments below. Let's have this discussion. I want to hear from you. Your opinions here are 100% valid, and I'm here to hear them out. And ultimately, if you are already down there, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified when new videos go live on this channel. And thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next Summer Film Fest video.
Scrolling through YouTube, same old routine, then bam, movie savant, what a scene. Trivia bombshells dropping knowledge like rain. Forget the dishes, gotta watch it again. Movie buffs unite, savants to place. Subscribe and hit the bell, don't leave a trace. Next level knowledge keeps you in the loop. Savant's got the scoop, ain't nothing to recoup.
Alright, quick little after credit here for this video. Two little things that I forgot to mention. One thing that I forgot to mention now that I remember, Clark and Lois are great together. And honestly, hashtag couple goals. But the second thing that I mentioned, and that's more of an actual thing, is that next week I won't be posting the Fantastic Four review because it comes out on Friday. So by the time that you see them, you know, see either the movie or the fact that I'm posting a different video, just know that it's going to be coming out on the following week. So just remember that so that you already know when the time comes. So yeah, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you next time.